Welcome to This Explainer. Imagine just for a second being dropped right into the violent, unfiltered glare of an ancient, wild world. Today, we're diving into Friedrich Nietzsche's masterpiece, Twilight of the Idols. But we're not going to do it through dry, dusty academic texts. No way. We're exploring it through a visceral, grim, dark, gothic fable. Think of it as a story of a sun-drenched garden, pale wanderers, and a massive iron hammer. It's this absolutely fascinating look at how a vibrant, completely life-affirming society can slowly twist into something stagnant and decadent.
So let's set the scene. Our story kicks off in an ancient, forgotten age, where there was this vast, untamed garden. And the trees here, they didn't ask for permission to bloom. They grew crooked. They grew fierce, stretching their limbs out like desperate claws, just to drink in the violent glare of the sun. They burst forth in this absolute riot of bitter, heavy fruits, powered entirely by the ruthless hunger of their own deep roots. You see, back then, a branch was considered holy just because it could bear the weight of its own fierce abundance. Even the wind that snapped the brittle twigs, was loved. It was seen as a tutor of strength. The wild earth was harsh, for sure, but it was incredibly, undeniably alive.
Now, to really grasp what happens next in our tale, we have to talk about a little something called philology. Formally speaking, it's the study of language and how words evolve over time. But in the context of our grim fable, and really in Nietzsche's overarching critique, it's essentially dark magic. It's the sinister spell of renaming reality in order to control it. And honestly, this entire tale is driven by that exact dark magic. As you'll see, language literally becomes the ultimate weapon of cultural decadence. It's a sneaky way to cast illusions and completely reshape how people view their own natural strength.
Section 1. Inventing the True World.
Okay, so everything changes in our wild orchard when a winter of weary minds rolls in. Picture this: a tribe of pale gatherers and travelers creeps into the shade of the canopy, and they are just exhausted. They weep at the unpredictable, bruising storms, and they literally tremble before the harsh realities of the deep soil. To them, this untamed growth is just way too sharp, too proud, too painful to deal with. They need an out. So, terrified of the fierce sun, what do? They draw a thick silk veil across the sky to block it entirely. They start throwing up walls and making claims that the true, perfect life exists somewhere else, in an invisible realm way up above the clouds. But here's the absolute kicker, the critical philosophical point Nietzsche's making here. By creating this perfect, bloodless sanctuary somewhere else, kind of like Plato's realm of ideas or the Christian heaven, you inevitably devalue the actual living world we're standing in. You turn reality itself into a mere shadow. These pale gatherers, they point their thin fingers up at this blank fabric they've hung in the sky, and they whisper, "Behold, the true sky, where no branch ever breaks and no fruit ever rots." This right here is Nietzsche's whole concept of how the true world became a fable. Life's actual natural struggles, the snapping of twigs, the rot, the explosive growth, they weren't things to be embraced anymore. They became things to escape. That blank, lifeless piece of fabric, that became their new artificial reality. Section 2. Morality as anti-nature. So, to guarantee their spot in this bloodless sanctuary they just made up, the gatherers decree a twisted new set of laws for the orchard. Nietzsche argues that traditional morality basically acts like a castrator. It systematically destroys the passions and instincts of the strong, all to protect the weak. Let's walk through this rather dark procedure of cultural degeneration step by step. Step 1, fear the storm, meaning reject the harsh realities of life. Step 2, drape the silk veil, inventing that fake true world up in the clouds. Step 3, bleed the sap of the strong. They decreed that the lifeblood of the thriving plants had to be drained to feed the barren ones. They actually tied weights to the soaring branches just to drag them down. And finally, step 4, worship the rot. They literally gathered up the fallen, worm-eaten husks and declared them sacred, simply because they suffered the most. And here is where we see that dark magic of philology really go to work. The entirely natural instinct to tend to your own growth, to rely on your own deep roots, that was maliciously relabeled as a sin. They called it selfishness. Meanwhile, pouring all your water and energy into wilting, fragile sprouts, which obviously leads to decay and sickness, was falsely paraded around as morality and salvation. It's crazy, right? This tangled web of weeping vines that couldn't even stand up without crutches was suddenly being celebrated as the ultimate peace of the soul. Section 3. The Error of Decadence. Now, if we take a step back, this Gothic fable we're tracking maps perfectly onto Nietzsche's academic warnings. The narrative elements, like the pale gatherers and their silk veils, represent the philosophical invention of the true world. And the ultimate consequence of this invention, the total devaluing of reality itself. By unpacking the mechanics behind this allegory, you can really clearly grasp exactly how Nietzsche viewed the slow, suffocating decline of Western culture. Because what we're witnessing here has a formal name, decadence. It's a winter of man. It happens when a culture starts valuing weakness over strength, which causes its vitality to decay and the collective species to suffer. When a culture fully buys into this twisted, unnatural morality, the garden goes quiet. It gets choked out by weaklings completely overshadowing and forgetting the plants that were once strong. The people essentially trade their wild vitality for a comforting lie. And right there in the shadows of that illusion, they build a throne for a king they just imagined. Section 4. Striking the Hollow Idols. But hey, the story doesn't end in the shadows. We are now shifting to our narrative climax, right at the hour of noon. The garden is gloomy, it's draped in silk, and it's quietly dying under the weight of these inverted virtues. And then, a lone traveler arrives, the gardener. He walks right into that suffocating gloom, carrying a heavy iron hammer that rings out like a bell against the frozen earth. And the thing is, he doesn't look at the pale gatherers with anger, not at all. Instead, he looks at the wreckage of this garden with a terrible, mocking laughter that violently shakes the silk canopy right above their heads. He sees exactly what they've done, and he delivers this fiery, absolutely crushing rejection. He shouts, "You have traded the lightning for a blanket, and you call your inability to walk a virtue. You have made an idol out of the rot, and you worship the very rust that eats your anchors. It is time to shatter the spell." I mean, wow. It's just an absolute unyielding rejection of their artificial sanctuary and their celebration of weakness. So, this traveler, he represents Nietzsche himself. And that heavy iron hammer isn't just some weapon for blind destruction. Actually, scratch that. It's not a weapon at all. It's a diagnostic tuning fork. He raises it to strike the hollow altars the gatherers built around the dying roots. And when he strikes them, these false idols chime with the unmistakable empty ring of a lie. He also brings along a pruning blade to clear out all that dead wood. This entire process, diagnosing the rot and clearing it out, is what Nietzsche calls the transvaluation of all values. It's about exposing the total emptiness of the current morality to clear the path for something brand new. Section 5. Pruning for the living. Just imagine the thrilling aftermath of that hammer's strike. The false idols completely shatter, and under the sheer force of reality, that silk veil splits wide open. For the first time in an absolute age, the fierce, golden eye of the ancient sun pierces the darkness, flooding the garden with light once again. The hammer-bearer turns to the awakening soil and whispers, "The winter of man is old, and the time has come to prune the cemetery so that the living may finally learn how to grow again." That beautifully illustrates Nietzsche's ultimate goal. It is not nihilism, folks. It is deeply, fundamentally life-affirming. He wants us to return to the fierce sun, to celebrate power and strength and life, rather than mourning suffering and worshiping decay. He wants to prune the sickness that turned a thriving paradise into a graveyard of ideals. Well, we have reached the end of our explainer, but the story is now yours. I want you to think about the dark magic, the philology present in your own life. Are you letting your own roots grow fierce in the sun, taking on the wild storms to build true strength? Or are you hiding beneath a silk blanket, avoiding reality and worshiping the rust that eats your anchors? It's a heavy question from a heavy hammer for sure, but answering it might just be the very first step in learning how to truly grow again.